Welcome to the Stampscapes lab. We're going to try something a little bit different. We've done a lot of photo stamping in the past where you're stamping on the top of a photograph, or sometimes I've placed a piece of vellum over this and stamped on the vellum and utilized the photograph in the background. But I haven't done too many I don't know if this would be considered like a photo collage or something like that. It's not really that, but it's the integration of a photograph with another piece of a component to the scene. In this case, I'm going to be stamping on a piece of 4-inch by 10-inch cardstock. I'm just going to be using the 4-inch width of it though, and I'll use the height of it here. And then we're going to use this photograph here, this photo print, in the background. Now I'm going to do this in combination with the Great Wave. And I can do that with the Great Wave and cut this out because this isn't a really big cutting, I don't know, whatever, assignment, I guess you can say. So it's an easy cutout. So I'm going to stamp this on this piece of paper, cut it out, and utilize the bottom portion of it in conjunction with this photograph right here. And I think we might be able to come up with something, reasonably dramatic, in theory at least. Okay, so let me see. Get my scrap paper configured here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just getting my bearings here, and I want to get this wave stamped roughly around like so that I have some of that cloud showing through here and not down here where I'm going to have this extra space showing. So I want it roughly around right here or so. And I'll do that like that. And maybe just to be safe here, not that pen. I can't even see it. Okay. Okay, so I've put a little mark right there for the bottom of my wave, like so. Let me get my bearings again, just to make sure, and that should do it. Okay, so this is a piece of semi-gloss cardstock, and no, it doesn't have to be semi-gloss cardstock. It could be matte, could be glossy, could be whatever kind of paper you want to use in conjunction with the photograph, but your finishing methodology might be different depending on the type of paper you use, okay? All right, let's see, let's get this down about like so. Large stamps, I stand up to give myself a little bit of extra leverage so I can use, I don't know, whatever, gravity to my advantage. And we have a really good impression there. Now, I'm going to have some shoreline down here, and we'll put our surfer down here. And I'm going to use my sand stamp right here. Or it's actually a snow pattern, but you can use it for sand as well. Like that. Kind of overlap. About like so. It's a little bit busy in that sand area, but that is okay because we are going to be utilizing tone to kind of render that out anyway. And we'll get some extra waves right down in here. And again, you're kind of overlapping as well. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a lighter version right in there. And just get a little bit of a texturing right down in here. I'm just kind of making that up. It's not like a formula or anything like that. I'm just doing that for this composition. All right, let's get our surfer stamped down there. And a little bit of extra texturing with my Tiny Rocks Small. It's like a little tiny stamp. Seems insignificant, but I think I spent more time on this little tiny rock stamp, knowing how I would use it in kind of repetition and texturing, and it would get a lot of work, so it had to be a really balanced image in terms of the placement of all those rocks to give it variation, but also kind of some consistency. All right, now this is all going to get cut out in here, so I don't really have to worry about all that, and it's going to be placed right on this, this top of this photo right here. But I'm going to heat set this a little bit so I can start kind of rendering it with some grayscale tones and shadow. All right, this has been heat set, and I've grabbed some pens. In the tones that I think, are kind of similar to the tones shown in this photograph right here. A little bit of this kind of violet blue here. We have some blue grays in here, and just some grayscale types of pens, okay? And I have a black colored pencil. And I think the black colored pencil is going to give me a nice head start in the kind of the rendering of all these forms in here. I just saw this pencil right here. This is gray. And I think that'll help out too, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start going in here and adding in a little bit of tone. And I'm adding it in where there's already kind of some dark forms in there, okay? So you're just kind of reiterating things, but you're doing it in grayscale. On the stamp image right here, everything is, strictly black and white. Now I've added like heavier additions of black and white where I want it to be more kind of like a grayscale, but in reality, it's all just dots, and they're just placed closer and more condensed, to make it look darker, to get those grayscale kind of transitions in here. But with this, you can actually get gray in there, okay? So it just makes it look quite a bit more full when you can actually utilize variations of true gray. Start off really light at first like that. And then see these other waves in here, how they're darker like that. Now you don't want to make them like a, 90% gray or anything like that, but you're just making them a little bit darker at a time like this. And you don't have to do that with all of them, okay? You can use that as kind of more of like a guide as far as where to start. And then what I do is I stop and I look at it. Okay, so it's getting a little bit too dark up there with nothing down there, so I'm going to add a little bit more tone down in some of these areas just to kind of balance it. So you have to kind of learn to kind of hold things up at a distance and to take a look at it and to kind of assess, is the thing that you want to do. And the way you assess is whatever, you can hold at arm's distance, put it up, across the table from you, and take a look at it, just as an overall piece and see how those tones that you're adding are influencing kind of the overall feel of the piece, okay? There's something like this too with colored pencil. I mean, it's not graphite, but you can, take an eraser and erase some of it if it's too dark. But remember, this is just the first color that you're adding in there, so it might end up getting darker and darker and darker, where these initial kind of applications are actually kind of light because, you haven't gotten to those additional tones that you're going to be using on here anyway. Now, sometimes, sometimes a lot of, well, I don't know, maybe most of the times I'm kind of using dye-based inks to go in and add in some extra tones. So I thought I'm just going to use some colored pencil here. And since this is kind of a small space right here, and it's going to kind of go, for the most part, be monochromatic, I thought this might be just, just nice and easy to do with colored pencils and markers. Now I'm going to add in a little bit of foreground in here too, so I'm not going to go in too thick right now. I'm starting to wonder maybe I should add in those foreground objects. Or I can always add them in later with stays on. Yeah, I'll just do it later with stays on. What I'm going to use is the reeds stamp or something like that, some kind of foliage. And if I do it in dye-based inks, I have to do it before I add in too much of the colored pencil because they're waxy and will resist maybe a water-based impression over the top of it. Or I can lay down my alcohol inks on here and maybe the dye-based ink, again, which is water-based, might not stick to it. So, but I'll just use StazOn. StazOn's the ultimate kind of equalizer when it comes to less than porous surfaces, which this is, but when you use all that media on the top of it, it starts to seal it off. What I'm going for right here is I'm kind of tinting or toning, shading my sides here. So it's a little bit more internally lit like this. I guess that's kind of the way the photograph is looking too. It's kind of darker on the sides. All right, that's black right there. I might use more of that, but let's go in and add a little bit of the color. This is gray here. I guess it's not color. It looks a little bit blue-gray to me, though, for some reason, like a steel gray. It doesn't look too much different than the black. Yeah, maybe it's okay. I think it's. There might be a little bit of a cool tint in there. I'm not sure. Yeah, a little bit of a bluish tint to it, I think. Let's go underneath the wave a little bit more. Okay, now let's see. Well, let's take a look at some alcohol ink. Okay, this is a really light gray. It looks a little bit fuller. I'm adding it in an area that's about the same color as gray, but it looks like it's fleshing it in. It feels a little bit more kind of substantial, I guess. You know, where the colored pencil, I mean, it looks okay with the colored pencil just as is. But it just looks a little bit more full with this liquid medium in there. See, I don't know. I'm able to get a little bit more tone in there, and I definitely more precision applications here. See, I'm just kind of going in those darker areas again. Okay, kind of going like this, little wispy kind of marks. Okay. So it's just like you're just kind of incrementally kind of fleshing in the scene. It's not going from, a really light tone to super dark, just in one fell swoop. Okay, I'm just kind of, I'm taking it like, I don't know, whatever, 2% at a time or something like that, darker, with either each application of, black colored pencil or the gray colored pencil or this very light alcohol ink. Okay. Now you could make an argument. You could say, hey, Kevin, you're just being too, oh, I don't know, whatever, careful. You should be bold and daring. And I would say, well, maybe so. All right. Here's a little bit more of a, ooh, that's a lot more of a bluish tinge. Maybe I don't want to go with that one quite yet. Yeah, let me see if I have something a little bit lighter in tone. And then I'm looking around at my pens. I don't think I do. So I guess we're just going to have to use this one. Okay. So I'll go in my waves in some of these areas like that. All right, and get that, and then I'll go back and, oh, here's a little bit of a lighter one. And then you go with the lighter one and just kind of blend that out a little bit if you can. Usually you can, especially with the pens on. It's not the pens on semi-gloss cardstock that I'm blending on. It's kind of the pens or the alcohol ink that I'm blending on colored pencil and another layer of alcohol ink that's underneath it. So when you do that and start to build up some media on there, it's a little bit easier to manipulate and to blend because you have all these different layers kind of built up, and you have these layers like that. And if it was on the bare piece of paper, it's soaking into the paper more. But these ones, when I'm applying more and more of this, it starts to float on top of the other layers that have already been applied. And that's a little bit easier to kind of manipulate. Again, because it's just simply not soaked into the paper. So that's another reason why I like kind of building up my tones too. My media, going multimedia, it's so I can kind of have an easier time blending in the darker colors. And I like to have a nice range of tones in my pieces. Okay, that is another gray right there. Let's see about maybe an even darker gray. It's like a steel gray. We'll go in the right underneath the wave like that. Kind of applying some. I can see it's kind of blending. It's kind of bleeding down into the wetter surface. And I'll go back to my lighter one that I was just using, and I'll blend that in like so, so that there was a little bit of a kind of a hard edge to the alcohol ink that I just applied in there. So I just kind of melted it back in there. It's not really melted, it's like kind of reconstituting it. So, I mean, you can use your blender pen too, which, you know, is kind of doing the same thing. Typically, I just go with a lighter version of whatever color I'm blending in. Okay, let's see if we can go for some warm tones down in this area, in the sand area. And this is supposed to be kind of like some sand here. It lights up the waves are kind of coming in here, so. So I still kind of want it illuminated down there, so I'm not going to fill it all in. Kind of creating a little bit of a shadow here. It'll be, you know, eventually more kind of black in tone, but I'll start it off with that brown tone. Okay, let's take a look here. Let's see if we're kind of in the ballpark in terms of tonal range. Still a little bit more bluish in here, isn't it? Let's try to get a little bit more of this one, maybe. Okay, I think we're starting to get there. There's a little bit of a light blue, they call it. Try to retain some of those lighter areas, or some of them at least, some areas of it, some areas of white. Not in every scene, necessarily. I'm gonna be using some white media in mind, so it'll be important to retain some of the white of the paper, but it's easy to really kind of get coloring and lose all of those little areas in there that create kind of maximum contrast by having something, medium dark, dark against that white. Okay. So if you want maximum range, I should say, but in some scenes, if you're doing like a sunset or something like that, you want to just fill it in with, warm light everywhere, or if it's a foggy day and you don't want, super bright light, it's fine to tone accordingly. But again, just kind of keep an eye on, try to keep a conscious awareness of what you're doing, to some extent. All right, we have that. Let's add in our some extra touches here with our acrylic paint pen and some white pigment ink in here to get a little bit of extra lighting and texturing, mainly texture. I might use a kind of a larger white pen too. The smaller ones are 0.7 millimeter, and the larger ones are typically about 3 millimeter. And there's, I think with waves and things like that, and crashing waves, I think, I could use this kind of thicker one in this scenario. Maybe this is Waimea Bay or something like that. And that's Greg Knoll, the bull, as they call them. Kind of the pioneers of some big wave surfing. All right, so getting a little bit of shimmer in there. It kind of adds to the whole kind of vibe. All right, a little bit more kind of action in there, for sure. There's a little bit more kind of movement, kinesthetic, um, I don't know, whatever touches in there, I'd say, with that. And a lot of times when I do that, you get it, but sometimes it gets a little bit busy in there. I don't know if this one's really busy looking, but we'll go in and kind of mellow it out and add in kind of a complementary texture, which is going to be a soft one with our cotton ball and white pigment ink. Kind of smash it down like that to get a lot of that ink pressed into the cotton ball. 100% cotton ball, okay? Acrylic ones don't really work very well, I find. It takes me, I don't know, 10 times as long to do it, and it just doesn't come out as good. Okay, but see this right here. Now this is not like super loaded. It looks like it's like super loaded because I'm tapping it in here, but my pad, this one's my kind of drier pad, C for cotton. So I keep this one kind of like, kind of on, if there, here's like wet, medium, and dry. It's down here towards the dryer. It's like between dry and medium, okay? But closer to the medium, I guess, probably. Maybe 25% maybe dampness, okay? So that when I apply this, I'm not applying like a big blob. If your pad is like super juicy and you ink it up, just test it out. And if there's a big blob like ink there, that's no good, okay? You want to do it where there's, a little bit coming off of this. And you want to apply it just gradually. If you have too much on there, all you have to do is just tap it off and you can use it like that, right? But see, as I'm applying this, you can barely see any of it being applied. That's where people tend to get like impatient. They think, oh, nothing's coming off at all. And then they put a big blob down there and say, oh my God, he made it look so easy. I really hate that comment, because it implies that I'm doing something like really hard, but kind of fooling people into, saying that it's easy. But I get, what they're doing though. They're just, people aren't used to, a lot of times applying any type of media and getting like a 10% version of it or a 5% version of it, using a colored pencil and getting, a really pale version of it, okay? So I just apply it like a smaller amount of media usually at a time, or I start off with a very light color too, and then I just kind of work a little bit darker each time, and get, until I get things are fairly dark under there. But I didn't start off with that darkness. I started off with a tone like that, and it just makes it so much easier. But people are used to using like a alcohol marker and just getting like 100% version of a certain color just immediately, or stamping out something in a certain color and it's that color, okay? But what I might do is I might take black's a perfect example. Take that, black pad and just dab off a little bit, and then take it in there very lightly, and then I might get a 5% gray or something like that using that black pad. So it's really not using black ink. It is black ink, but I'm going for like a really light version of it or something like that. So with something like this white here, I'm just going for a very thin application of it with each little tap, and then I get this really thin, almost like powdery like application of it. All right, so see, this is just a little bit of like mist. I kind of toned it, some of those background waves in a lighter form. And I'm see that just so that there's some variation in here. Here's sharp, and right in here it's kind of soft light, or it's black right here, and then this distant area is gray. So it just looks a little bit deeper that way too. Okay. And I think that should do it. Let's get a little foreground in here, and I'll grab my stays on pad and we'll put a little foreground down here. And then after that, we should be able to just cut this out and, in theory, paste it on top of this right here, and we should have kind of this combination of photo stamping. I guess we call it photo integration or photo integration stamping. That sounds a little bit too technical though. Some beach grass. See, each time I stamp this, I'm kind of rotating it around a little bit. I'm not stamping and rotating. I'm kind of, before I lay it down, I'm kind of leaning it a little bit more like that. So I get this kind of nice shape. Here, rotate it a little bit. And then I also go down a little bit more like that. See this? I leave a little bit of an opening like that. It's just for us to go into the scene, or maybe that surfer entered the scene that way. Let me see something here. I'm going to look for I'm going to see if it's, I can get those footprint stamps in there. I forgot on the new set that might work pretty well. All right, we have our footprint stamps, or design. Speaking of, kind of an entry point. Like that. Okay, now that stays on dries pretty fast, but let's go ahead and heat set that a little bit. All right, now one of the things about that footprint stamp, it's really sharp looking, so I'm going to match texturally and tonally, I guess, the rest of the scene. So I'm going to take and I'm going to put a little bit of this white pigment ink over some of those footprints, okay? Like about like that, so it's like, it just kind of matches here, so it's like going from a little bit darker to lighter right up there. See like that? Yeah, so it's not all just black. And I think that looks better like that. Okay, but that being said, I don't know, it's kind of going back and forth, you know. I had the stronger shadow here, but, and then I went into white when making it lighter, but like that. Okay. Yeah, that looks better. Looks a little bit more integrated. All right, so let's see, right in here, I'll grab my scissor and I also have an X-Acto knife, and I might utilize that, I'm not sure. All right, let's see if I can, let's test out my, if I have any tight image cutting skills here. I've cut a lot of rubber in my life, that's for sure. I'm not trying to stay like exactly on the image. I might go a little bit under, a little bit over. I guess I'll try to go a little bit under cut. Get rid of that excess. Scissor cutting, you do have your offhand do most of the work. All right, so this is what we have right here. Let's take a look at it and see what it looks like with the, where's my other piece of cardstock? Well, it's going to look like something like this right here, okay? Well, it's not too bad. So, oh, here it is right here. It's buried under all my tools. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this down. I have some spray adhesive. And I'll just spray adhesive this, and I'll put this right here. And I'll put spray adhesive on the back of this, and we'll be gluing it down right here, like that. Huh, looks pretty cool. All right, so I will return. We'll get this with my, I use a 3M Super 77 spray adhesive. And it's just a good general spray adhesive for this type of project, or any kind of card making. Okay, we have two pieces with the adhesive on there. You gotta work, I don't know, reasonably fast. The adhesive doesn't like dry like instantly or anything like that, but you know, you don't want to wait like 5 minutes or something like that. Just try to get it as kind of straight as you can. Okay, so we have that like that. Oops, I didn't get that one. You can see it's like hanging over the edge right there. Close enough. And why don't I do this? I'll flip this around. I can see it. I guess I can see it easier if I go like that. Coming up here. And then what I'll do is I'll take this and I'll trim off the edges. Or if, you know, if you're over a little bit in one way or another, you just trim off the edge and, you know, that should take care of it. think that looks pretty cool. So it was just kind of like I don't know, whatever. Just a comment that I made with someone that has had this sheet on order. I said, hey, I was saying, that there's different ways you can use this set. You don't have to kind of get locked into kind of a certain application. I thought, this scene right here might be kind of interesting with, with photo stamping. And I was thinking of a different way, like a photo stamping, whatever, collage type of thing. And I think that looks pretty cool like that. I'm going to put in a few of these extra little slashy things right up here on the, I'm applying them right on top of the photographs. So we have these little splashes down here. And I'm putting like a few of them out into the photograph like this. This pen feels a little scratchy. There we go. That seems like a pretty big surfing day right there. I don't know if I would go out. Of course, I'm not one of the big wave riding pioneers either. Nothing close to that. Such a long piece here. Let me zoom out like that. This would even be pretty cool if I had a little quote stamp up here. I'm not sure. Let me get this formatted here. So let me see if I have some. I got it on pretty straight, I guess. This one's, see this piece right here. This lower piece is a little bit shifted over. I have some of the photographs showing here. So I need to cut off like a little thin strip on the edge. I'll just put a ruler down like this and go with a matte knife, and I'll trim off that. Then I'll get this matted, and we'll take a look at it and see what it looks like in full, whatever, card formatted. Full card formatting, I should say. All right. I think I have a good scenic sentiment quote here. Heaven is under our feet as well as over our heads. Just the footprints here and then the photo up here. I just thought that's like that would be a really good quote for this card. And we have it double mounted here, which I usually do. I usually go with that thin white line to bring out those little kind of sparkly little touches down there. But anyway, yeah, pretty fun integration here with that. I don't like covering up that area up above so much, but I thought it needed something up in that area. I guess I could have put that quote down here. Maybe not. I don't know. But anyways, here's our card like that. Hope you liked it. And I don't know, just a new way to use the Great Wave stamp, I think, with this these photos in the background. Be really dynamic with like a sunset or something in here too. Different color striations like that. You can take your own photographs and print them out too, and that would bring an extra kind of personal touch to it. But I do have a lot of photographs like this, background photographs that can be downloaded and printed. You can send it out to be printed, or you can print them on your home inkjet printer. And the photos are free for download on the Facebook Stampscapes group. Okay, not on the Stampscapes page, Facebook page, but the Stampscapes group. Okay, it's called Stampscapes 2 Facebook, I think. And it's also on my flickr.com page under photo stamps, or cloud photos for photo stamping. I think that album, it's called that. You can download the entire album or just individual photos. You just click that little individual photos. You just bring up the photo, and then you click this little, I think it's a little down button. You click it, and then it asks you what resolution you want. You want to go for original, so that it can print out in its full resolution. All right, so anyways, thanks for watching. Thanks as always for tuning in to the Stampscapes channel.